When you take oral steroids, let's say you're on 40 to 60 milligrams, which is a pretty high dose of prednisone, that is a, 10x increase in your body's normal amount of stress hormone. So of course we're going to feel anxiety. Of course we're going to feel mood swings. Of course we're going to have insomnia. That cortisol is our fight or flight. So you are going to be on edge most likely during this. So you're likely going to be on edge until your body gets used to being at that heightened state of cortisol. Hello and welcome back to another week of Calling in Sick. I'm your host, Alex Wildison. We are doing it live right now. Cooper and I made it to Oregon. We're helping my grandparents move into their next chapter of life, assisted living. And it was such an honor and such a treat that we got to do that. I have never lived in the same state as any of my grandparents. And I have 3 grandparents that are still alive and I'm 31 years old. It feels like the best blessing in the world. And so being here for this moment with them meant a lot to me. And I think to them too. And I got to celebrate my grandma's 87th birthday with her. And this grandma, my only grandma that's alive, her and I are just cut from the same cloth. I look pretty much exactly like her. We act the same. We have the same humor. We like the same foods. We both love Cooper. So she's my bestie. But for those of you that don't know and haven't been watching the podcast, your girl got hit with her first cold of the entire year right before we came to Oregon. As they do, right? That's just like when it happens, and when it rains, it pours. And for additional context, I had chemotherapy at the start of July, then IVIG mid-July. So my immune system is all kinds of funky right now. Picked up this viral infection, was down for the count for like 48 hours. I didn't get out of bed for an entire day except for to pee, which I don't even do after chemotherapy. The day after chemo, I still get up and I make myself walk. I could not fathom doing that. So I was really fucking sick at 101-degree fever. Ugh, worst body aches ever. But then it lifted, and then it turned into a sinus infection and a little bit of, lung infection. So I'm on antibiotics and a little bit more steroids and an inhaler and all those things. And because I have this upper respiratory thing, my family and I decided it would be unsafe for me to physically help my grandparents move in, even though that's why we flew out. So Saint Amazing Cooper went with my parents and helped my grandparents move, and I stayed home and I had duvet days and rested and tried to recover. And now I'm feeling like $1,000,000. Not really, I'm still kind of sick, but I'm feeling a lot better. During my duvet days, I was here by myself. So my parents live in Indiana, but we also have a farm in Oregon. And so I was on the farm by myself with the dogs. So while everyone else was doing, physical labor, I decided I too should contribute to the family in some way, shape, or form. But I was very, very crunchy and granola-y because it was raining, so I didn't want to be outside. So I did paint by numbers like I always do. And while I was doing paint by numbers and on this increased dose of prednisone, it made me really reminisce to my college days. When I was in college, I was in a sorority, and whenever we had these big formal weekends, we would paint coolers for our date for away weekends or anything like that. Well, when Cooper and I first started dating, we had missed all the away weekends, and so I made him this tiny little igloo carry cooler and painted it for him for just one of the formals that we went to together. And I had all of these paints in my room. I was so excited to do it. I have this flare-up, and this flare-up is a flare-up from hell. This is probably one of the most embarrassing emotional stories I think I've shared on the podcast yet. I come back from classes one day, and my roommate and best friend, who I adore, had used almost all of my paints to paint their coolers. And instead of a rational human being would respond of like, no biggie, we'll go get more, ain't no thing. I started sobbing and got so mad at them. Like peak prednisone rage. Ooh, so good. I wish now I could go back, give that Alex a hug and say, it's gonna be okay. This is prednisone. I also wish I could go and hug my 2 best friends and say, I'm so sorry, don't take her seriously. This is Victoria right now. Which you guys will understand what Victoria means later on in this episode if you don't already. Anyway, long story long, as I tend to do, it made me realize I haven't done a prednisone survival guide episode yet, and it is fucking time. So this week we're talking all things prednisone. You guys send in some questions. I'm going to spend some time answering those, and then I'm going to go through my top 5 tips for surviving prednisone. So So let's get into it. But before we dive into this week's episode, quick little life catch up. I just told you guys I'm in Oregon, and oh my God, I love this state so much. It is beauty. Just, that's all I can say. It's absolutely stunning. Of course it rains. Of course there's gray, dreary skies and all of that jazz, but overwhelmingly, it is one of the most gorgeous places I personally think you can find in the United States. I might be a little bit biased because my parents and my family all live here, and I've had an itch in my body since I was a little girl to move here and be a part of this natural beauty. So who knows? Stay tuned. Maybe Cooper and I are moving. We're doing an extended stay in Oregon this time, which we've never done. But since I'm not working full time right now and Cooper has a totally remote job, we're taking advantage of it and seeing what it's like to be somewhere else for a little bit. And while we're away, our house is getting some little improvements done for the TV show that we'll be filming in my house on August 22nd. I can't tell you guys the name of the TV show yet, and I want you to know it is truly killing me because I am not good at secret keeping when I'm this excited about it. But I'm locking my lips and throwing away the key because I do want it to still happen. I'm feeling a little bit shitty because of this cold and a little bit of a flare-up. The weather here, I will say the weather here is definitely a little bit different than what I'm used to. Like 100 degrees, 80% humidity in Austin. And it's like 30% humidity here and 50 degrees at night and 80 degrees during the day and sunshiny. I mean, it's gorgeous weather. Don't get me wrong, but that little temperature swing is definitely settling into my joints. So I'm going to have to figure out how to finesse my way around that. But you best bet your girl brought her tools. Did I travel with my PEMF mat by higher dose? Fuck yes, I did. And have I been laying on it every night? Also, yes. Also, have my parents been stealing it from me because they are obsessed with it equally? Yes. But other than the obnoxiousness of some crunchy joints and some autoimmune pain, I'm so happy to be here. My heart feels very, very full. I'm excited to just relax while we're here, to do this job, which doesn't really feel like a job. I just feel like I get to hang out with my best friends and post pictures online and talk about life with chronic illness, and that feels really fun to me, which sounds kind of strange, but whatever. We're gonna roll with it. And Coops and I are just having a little bit of fun. Other than that, I feel like all my autoimmune meds are working, which is really such a relief. Because in 1 year from right now, Cooper and I are hoping that we can finally implant one of our embryos, we have 2, and try to start a family. And Cooper is going to be the best dad in the entire world, and I cannot wait for that chapter to start. We're also at a place in our lives where we know that if the IVF does not work, totally fine, we're just going to adopt. We cannot wait to be parents. We don't care what it looks like. We just want to be parents and put all of our heart and love into a little baby. And that's kind of the latest on our life. Let's do Alex's pick of this week. This week, 2 picks. First one, paint by numbers, obviously. The best ones are always on Etsy. I'm linking my favorites, the ones I'm doing right now, planning to hang on our art wall, in the description below. Check them out. I'll try to get a code for you guys. Second pick of the week is my face ice roller because Lord knows that's like the number one thing you need when you are on prednisone. Your face is swelling. You get this cute little fleshy glow. It brings everything down and back to normal and center. I'm going to link my favorite one. It's from the Detox Market. It's $12 and I have a 15% off discount code for you guys. So check it out. Discount code is AlexWildDetox15. Okay. Now let's get into the nuts and bolts of this. So when I was thinking about doing this podcast, I wanted to do a little bit of research because candidly, I didn't know how prevalent is prednisone in our community. Well, it turns out it's incredibly prevalent, which is what I had imagined. So I was very happy to be validated by this. Around 70% of all chronic illness patients will go on prednisone at some point in their lives. That can be a short burst or over the course of absolute years. Wild. A lot of times patients are prescribed prednisone as their first line of treatment when they are going through that diagnostic process. So you might start this medication before you even have a formal diagnosis, which was my case when I was little growing up. We didn't know exactly which autoimmune disease I had, and honestly, we didn't for like 25 years. That's a story for another day. And so prednisone was used along high-dose NSAIDs. Now, I've made a couple of posts about this online recently, and it's been very interesting to me that people have strong opinions, and it's really one side or the other. of it's super wrong for providers to prescribe prednisone before you have a diagnosis. And I think the thought is that the doctor is then just treating symptoms. And the other group says that is the only thing you can do. It's one of the safest first line of treatments that you can do. And it helps get your body to a stable spot and kind of prevent or at least slow down any internal organ damage. Now you guys know me. And more often than not, I can find myself understanding or appreciating their viewpoint. But this one, no. This one I have a very strong opinion on. Prednisone, however horrible, terrible, life-ruining the side effects can be, is one of the best medications out there for autoimmune diseases. I can't speak on all other chronic illnesses because I haven't lived them, but in my experience, prednisone saves lives. And I say that with a frown because the side effects do truly suck. But without it, I think all of us probably can point to a time in our life when things would have slid to a much harder spot. And in my case, when I look at my life with vasculitis, I could have organ failure at this point if it weren't for prednisone. I didn't get onto the right autoimmune medications for vasculitis until about 2 years into my diagnosis. And at that point, really the only thing keeping me at bay was prednisone. So hard to say, but I think I'm grateful for that medication, even though it makes me into a utter psychopath. Like I said at the top of the episode, yelling and crying at my friends for using my paint. Now, I think I have this perspective, though, because I've been battling autoimmune conditions for over 25 years, and I've been off and on prednisone that entire time, which includes my childhood years, my pubescent years, which is the worst time to go on prednisone, my young adult life, and obviously right now. So during all that time, I've picked up a couple tips and tricks, and I cannot wait to share them with you guys. And also, in the comments, I want to learn y'all's tips because Lord knows prednisone impacts everyone a little bit differently, and I think we all probably have a trick up our sleeve that someone else would benefit from. So I'm hoping that this week we can turn the comment section into a very full and complete survival guide. So tip number 1, separate yourself from the medication. You've got to put a buffer between who you are and who you are on prednisone. It's kind of like that hilarious, I think it's the Twix ad. I'm speaking out of my ass here because I don't eat candy bars because I'm allergic to literally all of them. But it's Snickers. You're not you when you don't have Snickers. I'm butchering this. I have bad brain fog, y'all. Sorry. You know which ad I'm talking about, though. I do know that. Prednisone's like that. You're not you when you're on prednisone. For 20 of the last 25 years, my loved ones just had to deal with it. And deal with it they did. At times, my poor mother, I think, wanted to rip her hair out because I was a monster demon child sent from the depths of hell to terrorize my family when I was on prednisone. Did it help the pain? Yes. Did it help the flare-up? Always yes. Did it make me a menace to society? Also very much so, yes. But I didn't have the words to articulate at that age what I was going through, what I was feeling. I didn't know how to ask for help. I didn't have doctors telling me what to expect with this medication. And I think that actually holds true throughout all of my years dealing with prednisone. And I think I know why too. We'll discuss that later. But it took St. Cooper, obviously, because St. Cooper is just him and we love him. But he decided to name this alter ego that I would become when I started prednisone. We fondly named her Victoria. And Victoria, when she arrives, we just know she's our third roommate. She's a huge bitch. She eats everything that's in the fridge. She makes Cooper go get her late night snacks. She eats them until 3 a.m. She scrolls on her phone until 4 a.m. She's grumpy. She says snarky things. She's sassy. She is pretty much the worst roommate you could possibly have. But it's not me, as Cooper reminds me. And so because we named this alter ego Victoria, Cooper can very easily say when I start to feel that prednisone rage, hey, Victoria, I think we need to go get you a snack or maybe a nap or something. And that de-escalates the situation because it's not me that he's saying, hey, you're being a huge B, Alex. He's helping me redirect and remember, hey, you're on a medication that makes you really cranky. And although it's not your fault that you're really cranky, it is your responsibility to change your behavior right now because I'm still a human and you are still a human. So that de-escalates things. Maybe we chuckle a little bit. Sometimes he goes nose to nose with me because you can't actually continue to be angry when you are touching noses with someone else and trying to have a conversation with them. So Victoria, honestly, however terrible she is, has kind of saved our relationship at times. Now, I know I'm not alone in feeling that way because apparently up to 90% of patients prescribed prednisone or other steroids report psychiatric effects. Mood swings, debilitating anxiety, an increase in panic attacks, depression, suicidal ideation, rage. Like, think mixed bag of the worst emotions possible, or I shouldn't say the worst, the heaviest emotions possible. That's the gift of prednisone that just keeps on giving. So if that's you and that resonates, you're among good company, and this episode's definitely going to be for you. Now, I don't know about y'all, but putting things in the perspective of science so I can understand why things are happening in a certain way honestly gives me some peace of mind. So I'm going to read my notes because I thought this was super, super interesting and gave me a little bit of clarity. So prednisone or dexamethasone or any of those other one-offs are all a type of steroid. And a steroid in this context increases the cortisol in our body, which is a stress hormone. Naturally, or organically, our bodies produce about 5 to 7.5 milligrams of cortisol every single day. When you take oral steroids, let's say you're on 40 to 60 milligrams, which is a pretty high dose of prednisone, that is a, 10x increase in your body's normal amount of stress hormone. So of course we're going to feel anxiety. Of course we're going to feel mood swings. Of course we're going to have insomnia. That cortisol is our fight or flight. So you are going to be on edge most likely during this. So you're likely going to be on edge until your body gets used to being at that heightened state of cortisol, which does happen over time if you're on it long term. So don't fret if you're looking at a very long window to be on prednisone. For those of you that have been watching my podcast for a while or following me on social, you know I've been in an active flare-up since May of 2024. I started pretty high dose prednisone at that time, 60 milligrams, and have been going down and then up when I needed to and back down slowly since then. I'm now finally at 10 milligrams. Praise the Lord. But I know it's going to be a bit longer until I get to 0. Because my body has to get used to these different levels and has to also start kicking on producing cortisol on its own. This is probably the most long-winded way to say it's okay if you're feeling mood swings, anxiety, depression, or any kind of heavy emotion to sit with. Our bodies naturally produce this stress hormone or chemical, but we're maxing it out. We are 5xing, 10xing what our body is used to. So no shit, you're going to feel like you're in fight or flight 24/7. But the good news is our bodies will get used to it. We will adjust. And then, you go down this route. And then, once you get adjusted to it, you start the taper and the whole 9 yards starts again. And this leads me perfectly to tip number 2. Use the energy or lose the energy. Within the first 72 hours of starting any steroid, oral, injection, IV, whatever, you get a burst of energy. And when you have been in the depths of hell of a flare-up with extraordinary fatigue where like your eyelids feel like you need toothpicks to keep them propped open, oh my God, that energy is so welcomed. You feel like a normal person. Actually, no, you feel like a fucking superhero because you feel like you can do more than a normal person. Those first 3 days of prednisone, I actually love. I wake up, I kind of flaunt the energy at Cooper. I do some exercising to get rid of the nervous energy. I get all of my work done. I am so fucking productive on those days. And I also find myself late night scrolling. The insomnia does start pretty fast for me. This is a side tip within this tip. Take your prednisone in the morning. Medical providers often tell you to take the dose throughout the day. You should listen to your doctor. But you should also ask your doctor if it would be okay if you took the entire dose first thing in the morning. For me personally, that has been my saving grace because if I were to take 10 milligrams of prednisone at 5 p.m., I would never sleep. So I take all of my prednisone first thing when I wake up so that my body can burn through it and hopefully still get tired by nighttime. But even then, sometimes that insomnia still hits. Now, you can ask your doctor for sleeping medications. I've heard people take Benadryl. Be careful with that. Too much Benadryl usage, apparently studies have said it leads to early onset dementia, which doesn't sound great. You can invest in CBD or THC products. If you're having terrible anxiety, talk to your doctor about panic attack medication. There are many things that you can do pharmaceutically to lower that whole cortisol kind of weight and get yourself ready and able to sleep. So let's talk about my sleepy time protocol with prednisone. The first thing I do is I start my wind down 4 hours before I even want to be asleep, which I know sounds absolutely ridiculous and like, who has the time for that? But if you want to sleep, you have the time for it. You just have to make the time for it. First thing that I do, infrared sauna. I either go somewhere or I use my infrared sauna bag at home. 30 minutes will do the trick, but basically what you're getting out of that is you're raising your internal core temperature, and then you want to crank down your AC so that that creates the perfect kind of internal-external dichotomy, paradigm, whatever the right word is here, so that your core is warm, your external is cool, and that actually promotes really strong sleep. Then I do a little rinse off, my nighttime face and skin routine, and doing all of those acts slows down my mind, slows down what I'm thinking about, what I'm doing, and I can just be focused on calming down. I drink a sleepy time tea every single night. I try to eat earlier so that my body is through that digestion before we're even close to sleeping. And, I would love to say then I do no screen time, read in bed and go to sleep, but nobody's perfect and I don't do that. I watch TV until I fall asleep. And when the insomnia is really, really bad, sometimes that TV stays on until 3 or 4 in the morning while I simultaneously scroll on my phone. Not the best habit in the world, but you know what? We don't always have to fight it. Sometimes you just flow with it. Because if we flow with it, we don't beat ourselves up about it. So Cooper has always asked me, what do you do while you are awake and I am dead asleep next to you from the hours of 10 p.m. to 4 a.m.? And I told him I dive into whatever I am fascinated by currently. I'm talking conspiracy theories, ancient aliens, the history of Formula One, cooking videos, interior design, OOTDs, wellness hacks, whatever has my attention. I go into that niche on Instagram or TikTok and I watch all of the videos about it. And I become a mini expert for that prednisone chapter on whatever topic I love. It's a way that makes me feel like I'm being productive with the insomnia. And also, over time, enough scrolling will make my eyes close. I also think just laying in bed will, and I don't know about y'all, but just laying in bed when I can't sleep because of pain or prednisone, it drives me to be so mad at myself. So either getting up or being productive like this, for some reason or another, calms that horrible self-gaslighting that I do and makes me feel okay about having insomnia. And then obviously, this is a very privileged tip, but if you can sleep in, if you can skip that first meeting, if you can talk to your boss or your coworkers about having a flex AM schedule, you don't have to have a conventional life if you have an unconventional body. So create that schedule that supports you, your healing, and the current medical protocol that you're on. Flow with it, don't fight it. Now, probably one of the hardest things to flow with instead of fight is the physical changes that happen because of prednisone. I know you guys know what I'm talking about. It's the swelling, the stretch marks, the moon face, the hump on the back of your neck, cortisol belly, weight gain. Did I already say that? If I didn't, I'm going to say it again. From 2020 to 2022, I was on about 60 to 80 milligrams of prednisone every single day. No tapers involved. I gained over 60 pounds during that time. I'm 5'3". That entirely changed how I looked. Simultaneously, I was on Cytoxin and I lost my hair, so I really did not recognize myself when I looked in the mirror. At first, I was devastated. I didn't like taking pictures of myself. I had never used the app, but I wanted to learn how to use Facetune because I hated how I looked. I hated how I felt. Everything about prednisone was already making me angry. And then I just channeled all of that anger into self-gaslighting. And I remember sending a photo of myself to one of my best friends who is a fantastic creative. And I said, hey, can you edit this so I don't look so chubby? And God bless, he said, Alex, I love you, and I'm not going to do that because you still look beautiful and you need to learn how to love your body no matter how it looks. And it was the tough love that I needed, honestly. So that was the first day I said, all right, let's figure out how to flow with it. And so every single morning, after I took off my pajamas, I would stand right in front of my mirror, that OOTD mirror you guys see all over my Instagram. And I'd look at my naked body and name 3 things that I was proud of or that I loved or that I was excited about. Now, you guys know me. I am very, very small. I have like no boobs. I had some boobs on me during this time. I'm talking double D's, like voluptuous mamacita. And I learned to embrace and love those curves. So usually it was looking at them and being like, yeah, girl, you got some nice honkers on you. Cooper also loved that time. Sorry, parents, but you know what? He did. I also started doing research on how to put more care into my skin. Prednisone makes your skin very, very thin. You bruise easier. You get stretch marks. They're called stria. They're not just stretch marks because they are like indentations into your skin that like are very thin. I'm describing this horrifically. If someone has a better way to describe that, please do in the comments. But it creates this very weird look on your body. And it's in places where there's crevices. So like armpits, behind your knees, your boobs, your butt crack, your upper thighs, groin. It kind of looks like an octopus got suction to you down there and just created stretch marks. That's probably the best and most graphic way I can describe it. Anyway, those things can be helped with red light, dry brushing, and really, really good moisturizer. So I did my research and I found the products that helped my skin fight that the best. I'll link them all in the description. And during that era, I could not figure out how to get my face back. I had a very round, very textbook version of steroid moon face. But when I tapered off of prednisone, my face came back. So I am living proof that you can go through prednisone and still get back to looking like yourself. Now, you guys heard me say it earlier. I've been on prednisone for the last year and I have not experienced those same symptoms or side effects. And I think that's because I've figured out the lifestyle and the holistic things that help me and my body when I have this heightened cortisol. We just went through some of those things, but one thing that I have failed to mention yet, but is one of my Alex's picks, is facial massages and ice rollers. That will depuff your face, and if you can move the extra swelling and fluid through your lymphs, it will drain it out. Then if you drink a ton of water, you will flush it out of your system. Now, the diet piece, I think everybody is unique, so you have to find your own. But I tried a bunch of them. I tried being plant-based. I tried being vegan. I tried being a vegetarian, pescatarian, Mediterranean, autoimmune protocol diet, low FODMAP diet, and then I figured out what made my body feel good. And I went with that, which was lower on sodium, which is kind of counterintuitive because I also have dysautonomia, so you need the sodium. But too much sodium on prednisone makes you kind of retain that water and swell up. Low to no sugar, that's the same thing. Low to no alcohol. And then a very, very clean protein-based diet supported with veg and fruit. If you guys want some of the recipes that we use, I can have St. Coop type them up and we will share them on our Substack this week so that you guys can try out those recipes too. They're kind of our staples in our household now and then. This also is the era that we started our daily hot girl walks. We try to get anywhere between 5 minutes and an hour of movement in every single day, and we do it together. We try to not have our cell phones on us, and it's our way that we can connect with each other, discuss our days, get some sunlight, get a little bit of a sweat on. And that, I think, psychologically helps with the prednisone, but also physically helps detox and get that movement, which is good for our weight. And then my last 2 little hacks I keep in my toolbox are spray tans, obviously, because if you can't tone it, you tan it, and to give myself a hell of a lot of grace. There are so many aspects of prednisone that are out of our control. But the things that are in our control, We lean into them and we figure out how to make them work for us. And then once you're feeling better, maybe you're in a remission-like state, or maybe it's just time to get off the prednisone, you start the taper, which everyone gets so excited about until you actually start the taper, because the taper itself is actually really fucking hard. A lot of doctors are actually pretty ill-equipped to be prescribing prednisone. And I'm going to say something that's going to rock the boat. It might be a little polarizing. I do not think every doctor should be allowed to prescribe prednisone, and I think it should be a controlled substance similar to narcotics. Meaning, only doctors that know the side effects of prednisone, the impact it has to our adrenal glands, and know how a taper should actually be done should be allowed to prescribe this medication, because it does have serious, serious consequences. You want to go low and slow. Basically, however long you were on prednisone, divide it in half. That's essentially how long your taper should be, which sounds terrible when you've been on it forever. But if you want to avoid the crippling joint pain that can come from tapering far too fast, the psychotic breaks that happen from tapering way too fast, the flu-like withdrawal symptoms that come from tapering way too fast, you go low and you go slow. Now, the dangerous part of tapering prednisone too fast is that you can push yourself into adrenal crisis. And that's when you don't allow your body to start naturally producing cortisol on its own again. And when you do that, your adrenals freak the fuck out and your body goes into a state of shock. It is incredibly painful. It's also terrifying. Your entire body shakes, your temperature and blood pressure and heart rate go haywire. You could pass out, you throw up. It's not a pleasant time. The one and only time I have done this was because I forgot to fill my script for prednisone and went cold turkey for 3 days. Landed my ass in the emergency room where I had nurses covering me in ice packs, antipsychotics, I'm sure, being pushed through my IV, pain medication being pushed through an IV, and the doctor's trying to calm me down while also pushing a shit ton of prednisone into my body. So although mine was a culpa mea accident, if you go too fast on your taper, that can also potentially happen to you, and it's avoidable. The right doctor will know that, and they will guide you through your prednisone taper to make sure you are safe and feel okay. And not to spook anybody, but that long-term prednisone use can cause those adrenal glands to stop working on their own. So you have to be gentle with them. You have to help them help themselves. And for those of you that are going, well, I've only ever been on 2-week bursts of prednisone. Nay. Withdrawal symptoms can start even only after 2 weeks of prednisone usage if you suddenly stop prednisone. So this is just a user beware warning, and that should really be a black box warning, that when you're ready to start your prednisone taper, have a very candid discussion with your doctor so that you guys can find the right taper schedule for you. Now, the other reason I think that not all doctors should be allowed to prescribe prednisone is that long-term prednisone use also needs long-term monitoring and management. Prednisone is known to decrease bone density, so you need to be getting bone density scans done semi-regularly to make sure that you are not developing osteopenia or osteoporosis, which is very weak and brittle bones. One of the common side effects of having osteoporosis or osteopenia from long-term prednisone or steroid usage is having fractures in your bones, like your hips, and having to need hip replacements at a very young age. Those things are all avoidable if you take the proper precautions, which the right doctor will know. You take calcium supplements and you will be A-okay. And lastly, the other reason I think not all doctors should be allowed to prescribe it is because it is a tough medication, but it does need to be used as a first-line medication for so many of us. If a doctor doesn't know which autoimmune disease you have and you are having shit hit the fan, I'm talking organ failure, I'm talking degradation to your arteries or veins, prednisone will stop that, hopefully. And while it's stopping that intense, irreversible damage, hopefully your medical team will be able to start piecing the puzzle together to figure out why that's happening, what the cause is, and then what biologic, chemotherapy, immunotherapy would be more appropriate to help you. All of those drugs are actually called steroid-sparing medications. And yes, they're great because they spare us from using steroids, but all of those too come with gnarly, gnarly side effects that you need to get comfortable with by talking to your provider. Basically, I guess what I'm saying is all of the autoimmune medications are tough and shitty, but you know what? So is dealing with an autoimmune disease that is left unkept and uncontrolled. Now, how do you even suss out to see if your doctor is good enough to prescribe you prednisone? You have candid and frank conversations after listening to podcasts like this, where you can say, hey, I did a little research on that medication that you suggested I take. I have some questions and concerns. I'd love to talk through them with you. Opening the door so that you can have that discussion. Now, doctors don't tell us all of these side effects, mostly because every single body responds to medications differently, so the doctor doesn't know which side effects you're going to have. So the only side effects they mention to us are the ones that we need to know are a red flag to go to the hospital and seek immediate urgent care. Now, that's not because the doctor doesn't care about you, but because if they were to tell you all of the side effects possible, it could have like a placebo impact to our psyche where we start paying attention to all of these little things that might mean nothing. And that's going to drive you crazy. And Lord knows that's going to drive your very overworked doctor crazy. So the burden is on us, the patient, to do a little bit of research and open that door for conversation with our doctor and then report any side effects that we are experiencing and get the help that we need to make ourselves more comfortable, because there are things out there to make us more comfortable. Okay, so now that we've gone through my bag of tips for prednisone in the most brain foggy way possible, you're welcome. All that said and done, prednisone is a bitch of a drug, but Lord does it save our lives. I hope that this episode is giving you a little bit of peace of mind if you're feeling alone and how you are feeling with the prednisone and the side effects, or has given you a little bit of hope that things can improve and maybe a little bit of intel of conversations you could have with your doctor to make it a bit smoother and easier to palate. Now, this one brain cell pick of this week is very prednisone coded. It's Somebody Feed Phil on Netflix, created by the one and only Phil. I can't remember his last name, but he was the writer and produced Everybody Loves Raymond. I love the show. He goes to different cities, tries out all of the delicious foods in all these different cities, gives them reviews. It's very family oriented. It's funny. It's great. And boy, does it make you hungry as shit. So maybe this is the worst show to watch while you're on prednisone, because it will make you so hungry. But that's kind of, already a baseline when you're on prednisone anyway. And what I try to reach for when I'm getting terribly hungry late night watching Somebody Feed Phil is a little bit of protein, like a protein shake, a scoop of soybean butter, a little bit of fruit, pre-cut and pre-washed by St. Cooper. We love a pre-cut and pre-washed little fruit display, or a little something salty, like a handful of chips. Now, despite being off and on prednisone for the last 25 years, I do not have all of the answers, and some of the things that work for me may not work for you. So, in the comments this week, drop your number one tip for dealing with prednisone, or ask a question of something you're struggling with, and let's see if somebody else can help you out. And if you're on prednisone right now, I see you, I love you, I wish I could give you a hug, and we can get through this one day or hour at a time. And on that note, I love you guys. See you next week. And that's a wrap. Thank you so much for joining me for another week of Calling in Sick. As a reminder, I would love for y'all to like, follow, subscribe, save, share with a friend, do all of the things. It truly helps grow this community, and it helps these episodes reach the people that need them the most, whether that's for an educational piece, to have a little laugh, or to not feel so alone. As a reminder, Calling in Sick sits on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify, and anywhere else where you can find your listens. From the bottom of my heart, I absolutely love you guys. Thank you so much for calling in sick with me every Monday. It's been an honor and a pleasure so far, and I can't wait to continue building this community with y'all. Love you.